Gu Fan's awakening stone turned gray, branding Six Eyes a useless E-rank talent. Classmates laughed, certain the quiet orphan had lost his future. Then a cursed technique system granted Six Eyes, Limitless, and points. The truth was simple. His celestial eyes were sealed, not weak. Those points awakened Six Eyes to S-rank and unlocked infinity. The system revealed full awakening could eventually reach legendary SSS rank. Gu Fan entered the martial exam, hiding that ceiling in hunting beasts. Soon the E-rank joke was racing toward Jiang Bei's #1 score. Only hours earlier, Gu Fan had awakened on Blue Star after falling asleep in another life and opening his eyes inside an unfamiliar classroom. 5 centuries before his arrival, spiritual energy had revived across this world and brought fierce beasts, supernatural talents, and constant human casualties. Cities survived behind fortified walls, while trained ability users protected ordinary people from creatures that treated humans as prey. Every teenager received only one awakening ceremony, making that single day the dividing line between ordinary adulthood and a combat-focused future. Most talents were elemental, while rarer categories included weapons, support abilities, spiritual gifts, and unusual special powers that ignored normal classifications. Talent quality ranged through multiple grades, with S-rank already exceptional, and SS or SSS abilities appearing so rarely that entire regions celebrated them. Gu Fan's new body belonged to an 18-year-old third-year student at Luan #1 High School, who had lost both parents years earlier. He lived alone, had little money beyond an old home and remaining inheritance, and possessed no influential family able to purchase expensive cultivation resources. His closest school friend, Zhang Yuanhao, was far more interested in the ceremony than Gu Fan initially showed. Zhang Yuanhao admitted that a poor awakening could send them toward ordinary work, because ability universities dominated opportunity throughout Great Xia. Traditional universities existed, yet there were very few places, and Gu Fan knew neither of them could rely on that route. When Zhang Yuanhao's name was called, he approached the awakening stone with the nervous confidence of someone expecting nothing extraordinary. Purple light burst from the stone, announcing an A-rank fire talent and shocking classmates, who had always considered him an average student. Zhang Yuanhao's crimson flame immediately changed how teachers and students looked at him, proving how completely one awakening could rewrite social expectations. Several earlier students had also produced strong results, giving school leaders cautious hope that this graduating class might finally restore Luan City's reputation. Then Mu Fushui stepped forward, and nearly every conversation across the playground stopped at once. She was already the school's most recognizable student, known for her grades, calm personality, and striking appearance long before awakening day. The stone answered her touch with brilliant orange light that shot upward and forced even veteran teachers to stare. Mu Fusho had awakened the S-rank weapon ability Sleeved White Snow, a rare ice-aligned blade with exceptional control potential. School leaders immediately surrounded her and escorted her toward the principal's office, turning the playground into a storm of envy and celebration. Gu Fan's name came next, but most attention remained fixed on Mu Fushui's result. Rather than the quiet boy approaching the stone, he expected at least a respectable talent, partly because transmigrators in stories never seem to arrive without some unreasonable advantage. For several seconds, the awakening stone gave him almost nothing, and Gu Fan briefly imagined being forced back into another ordinary life. That was when the curse technique system activated inside his mind and announced a novice package without waiting for permission. The package contained 6 eyes, the Limitless technique, and 500 points that could be spent on upgrades or unlocks. Gu Fan recognized the combination immediately as a spatially dominant ability set whose theoretical ceiling bordered on absurd. 6 eyes offered extraordinary perception, nearly complete visual coverage, energy analysis, and the fine control needed to operate Limitless safely. Limitless could interfere with space itself, creating an unreachable interval between Gu Fan and incoming threats, while also enabling destructive spatial techniques. The system explained that points came from recycling eligible items and killing fierce beasts, giving Gu Fan a direct progression loop. His status panel showed first-rank lower cultivation, 108 spiritual energy, beginner fist proficiency, and 6 eyes still marked unawakened. That single word explained why the awakening stone was behaving strangely, even though his system had already granted the ability. A faint orange flash finally appeared on the stone, suggesting S rank for an instant before collapsing into the gray light associated with E rank. The supervising teacher hesitated, then followed the final reading and officially announced Gufan as an E rank 6 eyes ability user. Students who had expected another strong result quickly dismissed him, while the teacher tried to soften the humiliation with generic encouragement. Once he stepped away, he reopened the status panel and asked why 6 eyes remained sealed. Gufan thanked him politely instead of arguing, because exposing an unexplained system in front of thousands of people offered no benefit. The system answered that 500 points were required for the first awakening and offered to spend his entire starting balance. Gufan's system panel contained several details he deliberately kept away from Jiang Yuanhao while pretending 6 eyes was merely enhanced vision. Before confirming, Gufan studied every category to understand how expensive later growth would become. Ability users on Blue Star progressed from 1st rank through 9th rank, with lower, middle, and upper stages inside each major realm. Ranks could be upgraded directly with points, removing years of cultivation, yet even the first major increase already required several hundred points. Gufan's 1st rank lower status was ordinary for a newly awakened student, but the system's direct upgrade button made that ordinary starting point deceptive. Spiritual energy could also be purchased point by point, letting him strengthen the foundation behind every ability instead of waiting for natural growth. 300 points could push him to 1st rank middle, once the system allowed the upgrade. Spiritual energy cost 5 system points for each additional unit, giving Gufan another path to increase power without changing formal rank. His cursed energy conversion skill transformed spiritual energy into the special fuel required by the system's techniques. That option was expensive in bulk, yet it improved every technique relying on the same energy reserve. Without awakened 6 eyes, Limitless displayed multiple locked functions, including Neutralization, blue, red, and hollow technique, purple. The beginner fist technique listed a 200-point upgrade into intermediate proficiency. His fist proficiency remained beginner because the original Gufan had practiced martial arts only as a cheap substitute for unaffordable spiritual weapons. Gufan noted that skill purchases could erase the training gap between himself and students raised by wealthy martial families. Even basic spiritual weapons cost more than his remaining inheritance could comfortably support, making hand-to-hand combat the practical option. He also discovered that Limitless was not one single attack, but a package whose functions depended on 6 eyes and cursed energy control. After comparing every upgrade, Gufan concluded that awakening 6 eyes offered the largest immediate return. Neutralization created the unreachable interval he later called infinity. He authorized the purchase, and all 500 novice points vanished from the system. Technique reversal, blue, generated attraction by forcing space toward an impossible negative distance. Power surged directly into his eyes as his ordinary gray pupils transformed into luminous celestial blue. Technique reversal, red remained locked behind deeper 6 eyes awakening. The surrounding world seemed to slow, not because time changed, but because Gufan could suddenly process movement and energy with terrifying clarity. Hollow technique, purple was even farther away and displayed no current path Gufan could afford. His perception expanded in every direction, giving him awareness beyond the normal limits of human sight. That layered structure kept the novice package powerful, without making every technique available on the first day. The system confirmed that 6 eyes had reached initial awakening and now qualified as an S-rank ability. Gufan also learned that 6 eyes reduced the precision problem involved in manipulating cursed energy. Other students spent months learning to shape spiritual energy efficiently, while his celestial perception showed energy flow with almost instinctive clarity. Neutralization and technique reversal. Blue unlocked with it, while red and purple remained unavailable behind later conditions. The ability did not automatically make his body fast enough to answer everything he could see. Gufan immediately understood that the E-rank judgment had not been completely false. The stone had examined 6 eyes before its real awakening. That mismatch became important because perfect perception meant little if muscles and reflexes could not respond before an attack landed. The important part was that the system listed initial awakening only, implying multiple future stages. Gufan therefore refused to rely completely on infinity, even after unlocking it. When Gufan asked about the ceiling, the answer confirmed that complete awakening could push 6 eyes all the way to SSS rank. He planned to keep training footwork, fist technique, timing, and ordinary reactions so one failed activation would not become fatal. That single detail made the school's laughter irrelevant, because his current S-rank state was merely the first functional version. The original body's poverty actually supported that decision, because expensive weapons had never been realistic. Gufan had learned basic fist methods for roughly 2.5 years before the transmigration, leaving a usable physical foundation. Jiang Yuanhao rushed over after the ceremony, visibly struggling to decide whether comfort, health, or silence would be less insulting. He assumed Gufan was hiding disappointment, and warned that an E-rank ability could make the martial path nearly impossible. Gufan calmly told him the stone had misread the situation, and that Six Eyes was much stronger than the announced grade. His raw first test at the Limit Martial Hall produced 151 combat power units. Zhang Yuanhao demanded proof, so Gufan pointed to his transformed blue eyes and briefly described their expanded perception. That result exceeded a completely untrained first-rank lower body, but remained modest besides serious weapon users. He explained the vision enhancement and near-blind spot-free awareness, while avoiding the more dangerous details of Limitless. A simple spiritual weapon could roughly double the threat of an ordinary physical strike. Zhang Yuhao interpreted Six Eyes as a support talent and immediately offered to form an exam team so his A-rank flame could carry Gufan. Gufan had no reason to buy one if cursed energy reinforcement could multiply his own body for free. Gufan almost laughed, because the question of who would carry whom had already become obvious from his new status panel. The first reinforced punch reached more than 300 units. He simply told Jiang Yuan how they could discuss teams later, and left before another argument started. When he compressed cursed energy almost entirely into the striking fist, the machine recorded more than 600. For an instant, Jiang Yuanhao thought Gufan's departing figure blurred through space, but he dismissed the observation as imagination. That number placed his bare-handed attack beyond what many first-rank middle ability users produced with normal techniques. After the ceremony, teacher Lu Fengwen gathered the class and explained that the martial arts exam would arrive in only 1 week. Normal lessons were suspended so students could practice their abilities, weapons, and combat skills before facing real fierce beasts. Technique reversal. Blue then crossed an even larger gap by damaging equipment designed to withstand first-rank testing. The exam rewarded kills rather than written performance, making actual battlefield control more important than a talent's impressive label. Gufan did not know the exact upper limit because he stopped immediately after the machine began smoking. Teacher Lu reminded them that low-rank students often survive through technique, teamwork, equipment, and disciplined spiritual energy use. Destroying a government testing room on Awakening Day was the kind of attention he wanted to avoid. Gufan understood the logic, yet he also knew high-grade talents still opened doors that ordinary students could never reach. In the neighboring room, Mu Fushui summoned sleeved white snow for the first time under controlled conditions. Preference forms would be collected in 3 days, forcing everyone to choose between the dangerous martial route and safe academic alternatives. The pure white katana lowered the room temperature as soon as it appeared, confirming the weapon's strong isofin. As the class dispersed, Gufan decided that speculation about Limitless was useless without real testing. Mu Fushui practiced a measured draw instead of using her strongest inherited skill against unfamiliar equipment. He avoided the crowded school training grounds and headed toward the Limit Martial Hall, a government facility, offering students free combat testing. Her ordinary slash registered slightly above 300 combat power units. On the way, his phone received an emergency notice about an escaped death row criminal named Yuan Sen. Yuan Sen was a second-rank lower ability user with the C-rank Shadow Dagger talent, making him dangerous to ordinary police and students alike. That was an excellent result for a brand new first-rank student and matched the prestige of an S-rank awakening. Gufan memorized the fugitive's face without expecting that warning to matter before the night ended. The explosion from Gufan's blue interrupted her preparation before the test fully ended. At the Limit Martial Hall, he entered the combat testing wing and unexpectedly crossed paths with Mu Fushui. Mu Fushu traced the vibration toward the neighboring room and remembered that Gufan had entered there moments earlier. She glanced at him as he passed, curious why an E-rank classmate had come to a professional testing facility immediately after awakening. For several seconds, she seriously considered whether the quiet E-rank classmate had caused the disturbances. Gufan used his new perception to notice the look without turning his head, which confirmed Six Eyes already worked beyond ordinary vision. Then she rejected the idea because even her own S-rank ability had not shaken the building that violently. He chose a private first-rank testing room, so nobody would watch his experiments or connect him with abnormal results. The contradiction remained in her mind and became one reason she recognized Gufan so quickly during the Yuan Sen incident. The first test used only his practiced fist technique, producing roughly the power expected from a physically trained first-rank lower student. He then activated cursed energy conversion, wrapping his body in blue energy and feeling negative emotion transform into usable combat force. Gufan, meanwhile, calculated the next 6 eyes cost and nearly laughed when the system demanded 3,000 points. Concentrating that energy around one fist more than doubled his striking output compared with Tip's punch moments earlier. Initial awakening had consumed every novice point he received. A second focused taunt strike pushed his barehanded power beyond what most first-rank middle users could produce without a weapon. Partial awakening cost 6 times more, and only then would technique reversal, red unlock for future use. Gufan finally raised 2 fingers and tested technique reversal, blue against the machine instead of holding back. Gufan had no point income yet, beyond the system's promised recycling and beast kill functions. A compressed blue point formed near the target and generated violent attraction that distorted everything around its chosen position. Spending time fantasizing about red therefore offered less value than preparing for the martial exam, where points could actually be earned. The resulting impact cracked the target, damaged the testing system, and filled the room with smoke and warning errors. He also understood that unlocked did not necessarily mean mastered. Gufan stared at the broken equipment and realized his non-maximum blue already reached destructive output associated with second-rank attacks. Even if red appeared on the panel, complex curse techniques might still require control, rank, and enough energy to use without wasting the attempt. That meant a full power test inside the room might have damaged far more than the machine itself. Next door, Mu Fushui felt the violent tremor interrupt her own test and instinctively wondered what had happened in Gufan's room. Blue already exceeded the threats he was likely to face during a high school examination. She rejected the obvious answer because her S-rank sleeved white snow had not produced anything close to that disturbance. Gufan decided that chasing larger explosions before strengthening his base would be poor resource management. Her own normal/registered impressive first-rank output, confirming that she remained a genuine top-tier student despite the mystery beside her. The broken machine strengthened that conclusion because he had produced second-rank destructive force while still officially first-rank lower. Gufan, meanwhile, checked the requirements for technique reversal, read, and learned that partial 6 eyes awakening cost 3,000 points. A stronger rank could increase the same attack without buying another technique at all. The price was far beyond his empty balance, so he decided that rank and spiritual energy upgrades offered better short-term value. His strategy became simple. Unlock only what changed his options, then spend cheap points on upgrades affecting every battle. He also remembered the smoking machine, calculated what professional equipment probably cost, and quietly chose to leave before anyone asked questions. That habit later explained why he kept 2,000 points after the exam instead of rushing toward partial 6 eyes awakening. The system rewarded optimization more than excitement. Gufan left the testing room quickly enough that staff would need time to connect the damage with his account. He did not steal anything or falsify the test. He simply preferred not to be present when someone discussed repair costs. Outside, evening traffic had thickened, and pedestrians were paying more attention to phones than the students leaving the hall. Leaving the hall, Gufan walked home through evening traffic while Yuan Sen fled across the city, with 2 defenders close behind. The fugitive knew recapture meant execution, so escape mattered more than collateral damage or the lives of anyone blocking his route. The emergency message about Yuan Sen remained on Gufan's device, showing a plain-looking face easy to lose inside a crowd. Gao Jing and Zhang Du pressed him with wind and fire abilities, gradually removing every ordinary path toward freedom. The fugitive's C-rank shadow dagger sounded less impressive than Mu Fuxue's S-rank weapon, yet formal rank mattered more in immediate combat. At a crowded intersection, Yuan Sen spotted Gufan's school uniform and decided a teenage hostage could force the defenders to hesitate. Yuan Sen was second rank lower, a full major rank above Gufan's current body. He activated Shadow Dagger, accelerated from behind, and reached Gufan before an ordinary first-rank student could have reacted. That difference normally made a high school student an ideal hostage rather than a credible opponent. 6 Eyes tracked the approach perfectly, Yet Gu Fan's body was still too slow to simply outrun a second's rank speed-focused criminal. Gao Jing and Zhang Du had already chased him through several streets before the routes converged near Gu Fan's intersection. Instead of panicking, Gu Fan activated Neutralization and decided to use the fugitive as a live test of infinity. Their abilities could hurt Yuan Sen, but attacking freely around civilians risked creating casualties the defenders were trying to prevent. Yuan Sen placed his dagger against Gu Fan's neck and announced that any movement from the defenders would kill the hostage. To everyone watching, Gu Fan looked frozen with fear, which encouraged Yuan Sen to believe he had chosen the perfect target. Yuan Sen recognized the tactical problem and deliberately searched for someone young enough to control easily. Mu Fushui happened to reach the same intersection and recognized both her classmate and the wanted criminal from the emergency notice. Gu Fan was checking his phone at the red light when Six Eyes detected the shadow-enhanced movement approaching from behind. She quietly prepared sleeved white snow, hoping to freeze Yuan Sen long enough for the city defenders to rescue Gu Fan. The celestial vision gave him information before his ordinary hearing could identify the threat. Gao Jing and Zhang Du tried to stall the fugitive while secretly requesting stronger backup. He saw the angle of Yuan Sen's dagger, the flow of spiritual energy around the criminal, and the gap in raw physical speed between them. Yuan Sen's demanded safe passage out of Luan City and threatened to cut Gu Fan if anyone used an ability. Running would turn the situation into a contest Gu Fan was not built to win yet. Gu Fan finally became impatient with the negotiation and told Yuan Sen to stop talking on and actually swing the knife. Testing neutralization offered a better answer and provided real data no machine could simulate. The criminal thought the teenager had lost his mind and angrily dragged the blade across Gu Fan's throat. The dagger slowed as it approached, crossing smaller and smaller distances until it hovered uselessly before touching skin. Gu Fan activated the technique before Yuan Sen reached his neck. Yuan Sen pushed harder, yet infinity kept the blade trapped inside an unreachable interval directly in front of Gu Fan. The action was invisible, allowing the criminal to believe he had successfully trapped an ordinary student. Gu Fan calmly explained that approaching him meant slowing forever, though the terrified criminal understood none of the mathematics behind it. For Gu Fan, the first live use of infinity became a controlled experiment conducted under extremely dangerous conditions. Cursed energy gathered around Gu Fan's fist, while everyone else remained too stunned to move. If the system's description was wrong, the next dagger strike could end his new life before the progression had truly begun. One clean punch launched Yuan Sen away and left the second-rank criminal staring at the supposed E-rank hostage in disbelief. That risk was exactly why Gu Fan watched every movement instead of becoming careless behind theoretical invulnerability. Mu Fuxue lowered her blade slightly, unable to reconcile the awakening result she remembered, with the power unfolding in front of her. Yuan Sen recovered, flooded Shadow Dagger with spiritual energy, and used his strongest assassination technique against Gu Fan's heart. The attack could threaten ordinary second-rank users. Yet the dagger again stopped before even tearing Gu Fan's school uniform. That failure destroyed Yuan Sen's confidence, because his best offensive skill could not cross the invisible space, protecting a first-rank teenager. He turned to flee, but Gu Fan raised one hand and activated Technique Reversal Blue. The spatial attraction seized Yuan Sen from behind, ripped him back across the street, and delivered him directly into another cursed energy punch. Gu Fan refused to let someone who had genuinely tried to murder him escape simply because the fight had become one-sided. Yuan Sen realized too late that his chosen hostage was more dangerous than the defenders who had been chasing him. Cornered and desperate, the fugitive destabilized his own spiritual energy and chose self-destruction as a final attempt to take Gu Fan down. The explosion swallowed the intersection in smoke and force powerful enough to badly injure second-rank ability users. Gao Jing, Zhang Du, and Mu Fushui all assumed Gu Fan had been caught at the center of a lethal blast. When the smoke cleared, Gu Fan remained standing without a visible injury and without even losing the shape of his hairstyle. Neutralization had stopped the detonation just as completely as it had stopped Yuan Sen's dagger. The city defenders could only stare while Gu Fan brushed off their concern. Sen described the fight as simple self-defense. He wanted no station interview, paperwork, or publicity, so he left before the arriving captain could turn the scene into a formal investigation. Body camera footage later showed the full encounter and convinced the defenders that Luan City had produced an abnormal young genius. Mu Fushui carried the same conclusion away from the intersection. although she still had no explanation for Gu Fan's supposed E-rank record. Within days, clips of the mysterious high school student defeating Yuan Sen spread through local social media. Students at Luan No. 1 High School argued about the fighter's identity, with several noticing that the video looked suspiciously like Gu Fan. Most laughed at that possibility because the quiet boy had officially awakened only an E-rank ability. When Zhang Yuanhao asked directly, Gu Fan admitted without hesitation that he was the student from the video. Zhang Yuanhao assumed his friend was joking again, proving that telling the truth could be safer than creating an elaborate lie. 3 days after awakening, the class returned to submit its final examination preference forms. Teacher Liu warned everyone that the martial arts exams involved genuine fierce beasts and occasional student deaths. He specifically discouraged low-grade or poorly understood abilities from entering because weak candidates suffered the highest casualty rates. Several students changed their choices after hearing the reminder, preferring ordinary academic routes over risking their lives for ability universities. Gu Fan kept his martial arts selection exactly as written, because the exam offered the perfect combination of points, ranking, and combat experience. Teacher Liu noticed his form and called him into the office after dismissing everyone else. He explained privately that even D-rank students were backing out, while Gu Fan's recorded E-rank talent gave him almost no statistical advantage. The teacher was not mocking him. He genuinely believed he was preventing a student from dying for pride. Gu Fan respected the concern, but repeated that he had already considered the danger and would accept responsibility for the choice. Teacher Liu finally stopped arguing and allowed him to keep the martial arts application. Walking away, Gu Fan thought about the real reason he refused the safer path. Blue Star lost cities to beast tides every year, and walls sometimes failed no matter how ordinary people prepared. Gu Fan had already experienced one life he could not control, so wasting a system capable of making him stronger felt impossible. Points came from killing fierce beasts and recycling items, making the national exam a rare legal hunting opportunity. A high ranking would also open elite universities, whose resources could later be recycled into even more system points. The progression loop was obvious. Hunt beasts, gain points, enter a better university, gain resources, then convert those resources into faster growth. Gu Fan therefore set a target much higher than simply passing the exam. He wanted first place in Jiangbei province, not merely first place among students from Luan City. During the remaining days, he alternated between rest and training at the Limit Martial Hall, while avoiding unnecessary attention at school. On exam morning, Gu Fan put on the provided first-rank battlesuit, checked his admission materials, and headed back to campus. Parents crowded the gates while nervous candidates tried to hide fear behind equipment, checks, and last-minute conversations. Jiang Yuanhao had barely slept from excitement and greeted Gu Fan the moment he boarded the class bus. The abandoned town's layout rewarded students who understood their limits, because each deeper zone multiplied both danger and score potential. Teacher Liu verified every name before the convoy left under temporary traffic control for the city outskirts. Most candidates spent the opening hour near Eridi, where first-rank lower beasts could be hunted with manageable risk. Gu Fan viewed those streets only as a warm-up, while his system was still measuring how many points each species produced. The examination site was an abandoned town, lost to fierce beasts more than 2 decades earlier. The gray demon wolf taught him that beast knowledge from school remained useful, even when his own ability was abnormal. Military forces had cleared the strongest creatures, but intentionally left controlled populations for training and annual testing. Its speed and attack exceeded its defense, so one clean counter was more efficient than activating a large spatial technique. High walls surrounded the ruined district, and beast roars from inside immediately frightened students who had never faced monsters outside simulation. Gu Fan's 6 eyes tracked muscle tension before each leap, letting him predict attack direction from tiny changes ordinary students missed. He intentionally sidestepped instead of blocking with infinity, forcing his body to learn the timing his perception already understood. A transfer student named He Jia mocked the nervous crowd and loudly called Luan students country people. That training choice prevented 6 eyes from becoming a crutch that only worked while cursed energy remained available. He had come from the capital, carried obvious confidence in superior resources, and announced that he would take Luan City's top score. The wolf's first lunge passed his shoulder by a narrow margin. Its second attack exposed the ribs, and Gu Fan drove reinforced knuckles into the opening. Most students hated the arrogance, but knew Hijia possessed enough background and training to make the claim credible. The beast died so quickly that almost none of its blood reached Gu Fan's uniform. Jiang Yuanhao complained about the outsider, while Gu Fan casually promised that someone would deal with him soon. That cleanliness later confused viewers who assumed anyone with a high score should look battered after hours of combat. The system's kill notifications confirmed the wolf was worth fewer points than the creatures farther inside. When Jiang Yuanhao asked who, Gu Fan simply pointed at himself. Gu Fan therefore followed his planned route, instead of circling for every weak animal hidden in Area D. Chief Examiner Cheng Shouyi silenced the square and explained the structure of the 8-hour practical test. His bracelet showed Hijia and Mu Fushui gathering points earlier because they had sprinted directly into combat. The abandoned town was divided into 4 zones, with danger increasing sharply from the outer district toward the core. Gu Fan did not care about the temporary ranking, because the deeper zones contained score values capable of erasing the early gap quickly. Drones occasionally passed overhead, but his low rank kept him off the main public screens during the opening phase. Area D contained mostly first-rank lower beasts. Area C centered on first-rank middle threats, and Area B contained many first-rank upper creatures. That anonymity let Gu Fan experiment with combat rhythm without hundreds of people analyzing every movement. Area A was the core region, where even second-rank beasts could appear among the strongest first-rank monsters. He used short blue poles to disrupt beasts only when physical positioning became inconvenient. Most first-rank lower creatures fell to cursed energy fists before they could force him into serious defense. Each candidate received a smart bracelet that tracked position, identified kills, calculated scores, and provided an emergency rescue function. The combination taught Gu Fan how little energy he needed against opponents beneath his output. Calling for rescue effectively ended a candidate's run, so students were warned not to enter areas they could not survive. Saving cursed energy mattered, because an 8-hour exam punished waste more than a single dramatic victory. Jiang Yuanhao again suggested teaming up, but Gu Fan told him he fought best alone and had no need to be carried. By Area C, encounter density increased enough that he no longer needed to search between kills. Red fire ants attacked aggressively from ruined buildings and broken pavement, where their armor blended with debris. At exactly 9 in the morning, the massive gate rose and hundreds of candidates exploded forward, using every movement ability they possessed. Their stingers carried poison, making close combat dangerous for students who could not finish exchanges quickly. Gu Fan moved through Area D quickly, treating every first-rank lower beast as both score and system currency, rather than a serious opponent. Hijia accelerated with lightning, while other talented students rushed to secure easy early kills before competitors reached the same streets. Gu Fan activated Infinity when testing ones at short range, letting the stinger stop harmlessly before contact. His combination of 6 eyes and cursed energy reinforcement let him dodge cleanly, strike precisely, and avoid the messy exchanges slowing other candidates. He then struck the head rather than wasting power against the thick body shell. Gu Fan deliberately stayed behind long enough to verify his bracelet and let the crowd spread out. A second beast fell, then a third, and the system's point total climbed, while his bracelet ranking improved from the lower hundreds. The system awarded 6 points, doubling the value of many outer zone kills. Once the outer district stopped offering meaningful resistance, Gu Fan headed toward Area C, instead of competing over weakened targets. Live broadcast drones filled the sky, sending footage of top candidates to teachers, officials, and younger students outside the walls. Repeated encounters pushed his balance past 100 points, while his public exam score climbed into a respectable position. The Middle District contained larger populations of first-rank middle beasts, including red fire ants with armored bodies and poisonous stingers. Gu Fan studied the map and decided to move toward the deeper zones instead of farming weak beasts near the entrance. Gu Fan's first spiritual energy purchase was deliberate rather than emotional. Gu Fan activated neutralization before closing distance, then crushed one ant's head with a single cursed energy punch. Sun's 100 system points became 20 additional spiritual energy units, raising the reserve from 108 to 128. A gray demon wolf interrupted that plan by leaping from cover and aiming directly for his throat. Another 6 system points arrived, confirming that stronger species paid better than the creatures near the entrance. The increase felt immediate in every movement because spiritual energy strengthened his physical baseline, as well as his techniques. After more than 20 kills, Gu Fan finally opened the status panel to evaluate his growing balance. Six Eyes made the creature's movements easy to read, but Gu Fan intentionally avoided using Infinity for the first exchange. Cursed energy conversion had more fuel available, and Blue could be maintained with less concern about exhausting the body too early. He still remained first rank lower, but the steady hunt had produced enough points to begin improving his foundation. Gu Fan tested the new reserve on another beast, and noticed cleaner acceleration, harder punches, and faster recovery after each burst. He wanted his physical reactions, strong enough to survive even when neutralization was unavailable, mistimed, or limited by future conditions. Rather than saving everything for another Six Eyes stage, Gu Fan spent 100 points increasing spiritual energy. He considered buying fist proficiency next, but decided rank growth still offered a larger total return. The wolf attacked again, exposing its flank. When Gu Fan slipped past the claws, his spiritual reserve jumped from 108 to 128 almost instantly. 300 points would unlock first rank, middle, once he accumulated enough. So every kill became part of a clear short-term target. The change improved speed, reaction, endurance, cursed energy output, and the amount of power available to Limitless at the same time. Cursed energy wrapped his fist, and one counterstrike ended the first-rank lower beast immediately. That calculation made Gu Fan more aggressive about moving towards stronger prey. Gu Fan judged that his raw output now threatened first-rank upper enemies, even without another formal rank breakthrough. Zhang Yuanhao's appearance briefly interrupted the optimization, but also showed how differently ordinary talented students experience the same exam. The system awarded points for the kill, confirming that exam scoring and system progression could advance at the same time. Since Area C had become repetitive, he planned a direct route toward Area B where tougher creatures could test the upgrade properly. His A-rank Crimson Flame gave excellent offense, yet he still needed weapons, timing, and careful target selection to avoid injury. Before leaving, he unexpectedly found Zhang Yuanhao on the same ruined street. Gu Fan smiled at the efficient arrangement and continued deeper while the public ranking board still listed him near the bottom. Zhang Yuanhao had earned his ranking through genuine effort and was proud of surviving Area C without outside help. Zhang Yuanhao had reached the middle zone through legitimate combat and was surprised to see his supposedly E-rank friend moving even deeper. When the evil Horn Ox appeared, he responded exactly as training had taught him, by placing the stronger visible fighter between danger and a weak teammate. Gu Fan invited him toward Area B and confidently promised protection against anything they encountered. The choice revealed his character more clearly than any score. Zhang Yuanhao thought the offer was insane, because Area B contained first-rank upper beasts capable of killing ordinary students almost immediately. He knew the ox could overpower him and still chose to protect Gu Fan, because abandoning a friend felt worse than taking the risk. Their argument ended when an evil horn ox charged from behind a collapsed building. Crimson Flame coated the sword and increased cutting power, but the ox's horn absorbed the strike with almost no damage. The creature was technically first-rank middle, yet its thick hide and brutal physical strength made it more dangerous than many upper-stage monsters. The rebound numbed Zhang Yuanhao's hands and split the skin between his fingers. Zhang Yuanhao stepped in front of Gu Fan's because he still believed his A-rank flame gave him the better chance to survive. A second charge would have broken through his defense completely. Crimson Flame wrapped around his sword as he met the charging horn directly. Gu Fan stepped forward before that could happen and treated the ox's momentum as a practical infinity demonstration. The collision forced Zhang Yuanhao backward, tore his palms, and made him understand that a second block would probably fail. His palm never truly needed to absorb the full force, because Limitless prevented the charging horn from completing contact. He considered retreating but refused to abandon Gu Fan, whom he still assumed had little real combat power. From Zhang Yuanhao's angle, however, it looked as though Gu Fan had casually stopped a vehicle-sized monster with one hand. As the ox launched another charge, Gu Fan casually moved past his friend and stopped the horn with one hand. The ox kept pushing and became increasingly frantic as the final distance refused to disappear. Zhang Yuanhao watched the enormous beast push with everything it had while Gu Fan barely changed posture. Gu Fan ended the struggle with a decisive counter, instead of wasting more examination time. The scene finally shattered his assumption that Six Eyes was nothing more than an unusual visual support ability. Only then did Jiang Yuanhao begin replaying every unbelievable statement his friend had made since awakening day. Gu Fan mocked the ox for wasting effort, then disabled it with overwhelming force instead of dragging out the fight. The mysterious criminal fight, the spatial-looking movement, and the claim that Six Eyes was strong suddenly fit one explanation. Jiang Yuanhao connected the performance with the viral fugitive video and demanded to know whether Gu Fan had been telling the truth all along. Gu Fan had been telling the truth so openly that everyone had mistaken honesty for bragging. Jiang Yuanhao's refusal to enter Area B still stood after learning the truth. Gu Fan reminded him that he had admitted everything already. Nobody believed him because the answer sounded ridiculous. He understood that following Gu Fan would improve his score, while weakening the meaning of that score as a measure of his own ability. He again offered to bring Jiang Yuanhao deeper, where the system user expected better rewards. Gu Fan respected the decision because the friend was choosing long-term growth over an easy ranking boost. Jiang Yuanhao refused for a reason Gu Fan respected rather than mocked. That separation also removed the risk of Gu Fan accidentally dragging Jiang Yuanhao into second-rank encounters later. He wanted his university place to come from strength he had personally earned, not from following a friend who could erase every threat. The outside broadcast became increasingly interested as Gu Fan crossed ranking thresholds faster than expected. Jiang Yuanhao chose to remain in Area C, where he could push himself without turning the exam into borrowed achievement. Teacher Liu watched the numbers change before he saw any footage, creating a sequence of disbelief that grew every few minutes. Gu Fan checked the ranking and saw his friend already holding a respectable position, so he accepted this decision. At first, he suspected Gu Fan had found injured beasts left behind by stronger candidates. They separated with a simple agreement to meet after the exam. Then the ranking climbed too quickly for luck to explain. Outside the walls, giant screens displayed the top 10 candidates, while officials and teachers monitored a live top 50 ranking. When Gu Fan entered the top 20, several teachers began asking whether the file contained the wrong ability grade. He Jia held first place, Mu Fuxue remained close behind, and several other strong students occupied the most visible feeds. Teacher Luf insisted the Awakening Stone had clearly ended on Gray E-rank light. Education Bureau Director Chen Deming praised the quality of this year's class, but disliked seeing outsider dominate Luan City's rankings. He also admitted there had been a strange orange flash beforehand, a detail nobody considered important during the ceremony. Principal Liu admitted that He Jia's capital upbringing gave him better training, equipment knowledge, and combat preparation than most local students. Director Chen found that detail far more interesting. Now that the student's score was approaching the top 10, the officials expected Mu Fuxue's S-rank talent to produce Luan City's best result, even if she failed to catch the transfer student. An orange flash corresponded to S-rank, making the original reading look less certain in hindsight. Teacher Liu sat farther back with other homeroom teachers and initially paid little attention to the lower rankings. No one yet knew that the system had awakened Six Eyes, only after the stone's confused result. Then, someone pointed out that Gu Fan had entered the top 30, despite his recorded E-rank talent. Gu Fan reached the boundary of Area B with exactly enough system points for the rank upgrade he wanted. Teacher Liu stared at the name, convinced for a moment that the ranking system had confused two students. He spent 300 immediately because carrying unused points into stronger territory offered no strategic benefit. Gu Fan's position rose again before he could finish checking. The system drew spiritual energy from the environment, faster than any cultivation technique Gu Fansense had studied in school. He jumped through the 20s, while teachers around Lu Fengwen asked how an E-rank student was collecting kills so quickly. Pure power entered his meridians without requiring spirit stones, meditation, or the filtering process ordinary users depended on. Teacher Liu remembered personally advising Gu Fan to withdraw, and suddenly became much less confident in his own evaluation. The breakthrough barrier shattered almost instantly. By the time Gu Fan reached Area B, his ranking had climbed near the top 20, and his system balance exceeded 300 points. Gu Fan's body became first-rank middle, before a normal observer could have recognized that cultivation had even begun. He stopped just beyond the boundary and chose the most valuable upgrade available at that moment. His new aura settled quickly, but the system grayed out the next rank button. 300 points vanished, and the system forced heaven and earth energy into his body with impossible efficiency. The body adaptation requirement meant Gu Fan could not jump directly to first rank upper, even if enough points appeared. The breakthrough from first rank, lower, to first rank middle, completed in less than a second. That restriction encouraged him to buy permanent attributes and proficiency, while the rank cooldown recovered. No meditation, spirit stones, cultivation manual, or months of training were required. It also prevented sudden system growth from damaging a body that had not adjusted to the previous increase. Area B finally gave the public broadcast enough evidence to understand why Gufan's ranking had been rising without visible injuries. Luck. Gufan felt his entire body strengthen as the new rank raised the base power behind every skill he already possessed. Gufan accepted the rule and stepped into Area B, eager to measure the actual difference. Red Claw tigers that forced elite students into prolonged exchanges reacted to him like prey sensing a larger predator. He also discovered the system would not let him chain endless rank upgrades without consequence. Gufan alternated between intermediate fists and short blue activations, avoiding oversized attacks unless multiple targets gathered together. The first Red Claw tiger provided an ideal benchmark because the species had no obvious statistical weakness. After each breakthrough, his body needed time to adapt before the next rank option became available. That approach produced more system points per unit of spiritual energy and preserved enough reserve for the unknown dangers inside Area A. Its claws, speed, height, and instincts were all strong enough to punish students who relied on one-dimensional talent. His intermediate fist upgrade changed small details everywhere: stance recovery, shoulder rotation, breathing, foot placement, and timing after a missed strike. That restriction explained why spiritual energy purchases and skill upgrades still mattered instead of the system, becoming a single-button cultivation ladder. Animal instinct made the tiger hesitate, despite Gufan's lower visible rank. Gufan had not physically practiced those improvements, yet the knowledge felt deeply familiar as soon as the system completed the purchase. Gufan accepted the limitation and walked deeper into Area B, looking for something worthy of his new rank. Predators expected weaker creatures to flee, not walk closer with hands casually resting near their pockets. The results showed why proficiency upgrades could become as valuable as spectacular curse techniques later. A Red Claw tiger emerged from an alley, combining speed, strong defense, and dangerous close-range attacks without easy. Zufan used that hesitation to study the beast's breathing and muscle movements through 6 eyes. A perfectly timed ordinary punch sometimes solved a fight more cheaply than blue. The beast sensed Gufan's middle-stage aura, but became hesitant when the student approached with complete confidence instead of fear. That efficiency mattered when Gufan found several Red Claw tigers occupying the same ruined intersection. When the tiger finally chose escape, Blue reversed the distance and dragged it straight back. The pack spread around him rather than charging from one direction, using predator instincts that would overwhelm a normal student. Gufan deliberately kept his hands relaxed and continued forward until the tiger began retreating. The finishing punch required so little effort that Gufan immediately understood the rank upgrades had exceeded his expectations. 6 eyes tracked every body simultaneously, removing the visual confusion created by attacks from multiple angles. When it finally turned to flee, technique reversal, Blue pulled it back across the street. Another 12 system points arrived, making upper stage prey far more efficient than the exam's outer zones. Gufan decided the group finally justified a larger technique reversal. Blue, one cursed energy punch, dropped the first rank upper predator and awarded another burst of system points. From that moment, Gufan stopped treating Area B as a challenge and started treating it as a points field. He selected a point at the center of the intersection and forced surrounding space to collapse toward it. Gufan found the exchange almost disappointing, yet stronger beasts now paid enough points to make easy victories worthwhile. Broken pavement, loose metal, dust, and attacking tigers all accelerated toward the same destructive center. The spatial force crushed the pack before any claw crossed infinity. Elsewhere in Area B, Hijia encountered another Red Claw tiger and had a far different experience. When the technique ended, the intersection looked as though heavy military equipment had struck it rather than a teenager. Hijia relied on an advanced spear technique, lightning reinforcement, and serious concentration to survive a long exchange. Kill notifications appeared one after another and refilled part of the balance Gufan had spent on recent upgrades. The capital student eventually drove his spear through the tiger's eye and won. But his battlesuit was torn, and his energy depleted. The exam bracelet awarded enough score to push him from the upper rankings into direct contention for first. Officials outside praised the victory because killing above one's current level was genuinely impressive for a high school candidate. Outside, the public screen replayed the attack, while educators tried to classify what they had just witnessed. Director Chen recognized no ordinary elemental talent that could combine attraction, movement, and invisible defense so naturally. He just celebrated toward the camera, certain the performance proved why Luan City's local students could not threaten him. Principal Liu ordered staff to preserve the footage for later ability review, rather than guessing from the E-rank file. Minutes later, the ranking board showed Gu Fan climbing again. Teacher Liu stopped defending his original recommendation and simply admitted that Gu Fan had hidden more than anyone realized. Teachers began asking for his ability information, and Teacher Liu reluctantly repeated that the official file still said E-rank 6 eyes. Mu Fuxue's feed offered a useful comparison. Nobody could explain how those two facts existed together. Her S-rank sleeved white snow gave exceptional control, letting her freeze dangerous first-rank middle beasts with elegant precision. The weapon also allowed her to manage groups more safely than many offensive talents. When Gu Fan finally entered the top 10, his personal feed replaced another candidate on the public screens. Against tougher first-rank, upper creatures, however, freezing required more time and energy before she could finish the target. The officials expected a wounded student, desperately fighting for each point. Mu Fuxue understood her ability's strengths and chose efficient routes rather than forcing every fight. Instead, they saw Su Fan strolling through a ruined street with clean clothes, relaxed posture, and both hands in his pockets. She remained one of Luan City's best candidates by any normal standard. The contrast made his ranking more confusing than if he had appeared covered in injuries. Gu Fan's abnormal output simply created a standard the rest of the exam was not designed around. When the ranking placed Gu Fan above Mu Fuxue, she remembered the criminal's self-destruction failing to disturb his uniform. Chen Deming asked whether the E-rank label could be wrong, while Principal Liu demanded every detail Teacher Liu remembered from Awakening Day. That memory made the new result believable, even if she still did not understand his mechanics. The homeroom teacher could offer only the same impossible story. Gu Fan had received gray light, accepted the result calmly, then insisted on taking the martial exam. Jia lacked the same evidence and interpreted the scoreboard through pride instead. On the screen, a pack of beasts discovered Gu Fan and began moving toward him. His own A-rank lightning talent and advanced spear proficiency had been developed with capital-level teachers and resources. The audience leaned forward, finally expecting to see how the mysterious student was collecting points. In Luan City, he expected those advantages to create an overwhelming gap. The Red Claw Tiger he fought proved he really was strong. Gu Fan activated Blue, with far more output than he had used against individual targets. Jia survived repeated claw strikes, controlled distance with his spear, and used lightning to increase both speed and piercing force. Spatial attraction ripped multiple Red Claw Tigers into the same kill zone and tore apart the ruined intersection around them. The battle lasted long enough to damage his suit and exhaust a meaningful portion of spiritual energy. The entire pack disappeared in one attack, while the environmental damage looked closer to a second-rank battle than a student exam. His final thrust through the eye required patience and technique rather than brute force. System notifications stacked rapidly as Gu Fan collected points from every tiger. Officials praised the victory because a first-rank middle student defeating a first-rank upper tiger remained an elite performance. Jia saw the kill as confirmation that nobody from the small city should be ahead of him. His bracelet ranking jumped again, moving him into direct competition with Jia and Mu Fuxue. Then the bracelet displayed Gu Fan in first. Outside the walls, Director Chen stopped questioning whether the E-rank classification was incomplete. Jia began following signs of combat through the streets, instead of continuing his own optimal route. The only remaining question was what kind of ability could provide attack, defense, movement, perception, and endurance at the same time. The first headless tiger corpse suspicious because almost no prolonged fighting marks surrounded it. Teacher Liu felt increasingly absurd, remembering how seriously he had explained that Gu Fan should learn to give up. More bodies appeared with the same overwhelming damage pattern. At the large crater, Jia's suspicion became certainty in his own mind. Gu Fan used the points from the pack to raise spiritual energy until his reserve reached 200. He had never seen a student technique capable of producing that result. so forbidden equipment seemed more reasonable than unknown talent. That threshold satisfied a system condition and further strengthened the output available to Blue and Neutralization. The conclusion ignored the live drones because He Jiao wanted an explanation that preserved his assumption of superiority. With more than 200 points still available, Gu Fan upgraded his fist technique from beginner to intermediate. He Jia caught up near the broken bridge and immediately accused Gu Fan of relying on illegal second-rank weapons and defensive equipment. He followed fresh traces until the ruined bridge at the edge of Area A. Knowledge, timing, footwork, and striking mechanics entered his memory, as if he had practiced them. Gu Fan was already there studying the map and calculating how much time remained. Gu Fan pointed toward the drones overhead and asked how constant live monitoring could possibly miss such obvious cheating. The brace listed Area A as the highest danger district and warned that second-rank creatures could appear without predictable locations. The question left He Jia without evidence, but his pride still refused to accept the simpler explanation. A few experimental punches made the air crack sharply enough to confirm the difference. Most candidates never entered it, because one unlucky encounter could end an otherwise successful exam. Gu Fan ignored him and stepped toward the river, separating Area B from the swampy core district. Gu Fan now believed his bare-handed skill alone could challenge enemies that would overwhelm ordinary first-rank middle students. Gu Fan saw the opposite incentive. He Jia watched in disbelief as Gu Fan placed one foot on the water and continued forward without sinking. He continued hunting upper-stage beasts, and the ranking finally placed his name above both local favorites. Second-rank lower beasts paid thousands of examination points, and the system rewarded them far better than first-rank targets. Infinity and precise energy control made the surface behave as though Gu Fan were crossing solid ground. Mu Fuxue noticed the change through her bracelet and reacted with surprise rather than resentment. A few core area victories could matter more than hours of outer zone hunting. He Jia jumped after him because turning back would mean admitting that the local student had entered a zone he feared. He Jia's accusation interrupted Gu Fan before he crossed the bridge. She had already seen Gu Fan survive a second-rank criminal's self-destruction, so his exam dominance only confirmed what she suspected. His heavy spear and ordinary movement technique made the river crossing far less comfortable. The capital student pointed to the devastation behind them and claimed no legitimate high school technique could create those results. Her own sleeved white snow remained excellent, yet its control-focused nature killed upper-stage beasts more slowly than Gu Fan's overwhelming spatial attacks. A violent carp burst from the water and lunged at Gu Fan, giving He Jia a brief hope that the reckless display would finally end. Gu Fan asked which rule he had supposedly broken and made He Jia specify illegal spiritual weapons and armor. Mu Fuxiu adjusted her route and concentrated on efficient targets instead of chasing a score she could not match through raw speed. The first-rank upper beast stopped before touching Gu Fan, suspended against infinity, just like Yuan Sen's dagger had been. The explanation collapsed immediately, under simple observation. Ju Fan casually eliminated the carp and continued across, while He Jia struggled through the current behind him. Jiang Yuanhao saw Gu Fan's name rise as well, and celebrated loudly, despite knowing his own ranking would never approach it. Gu Fan carried no visible weapon. His uniform showed no armor structure, and every movement had been filmed from the sky. The examiners had authority to remove cheaters instantly, yet Gu Fan remained first on the official board. The capstat finally understood that Gu Fan's clean clothing was not proof of armor. Attacks literally failed to reach him. He Jia reacted differently when the unfamiliar local name finally displaced him from first place. He Jia could not answer that contradiction and shifted from evidence toward resentment. Area A opened into a swamp forest where deep mud, tangled roots, and hidden beasts made movement dangerous even before combat started. The transfer student immediately suspected that an unknown Luan candidate could not legitimately outperform medical training and A-rank lightning talent. Gu Fan decided further argument would waste hunting time and stepped off the broken bridge toward the river. Gu Fan used blue-assisted movement and six eyes to cross terrain that slowed He Jia almost immediately. His suspicion hardened when he entered streets filled with red claw tiger corpses showing signs of overwhelming, nearly instantaneous attacks. The maneuver looked suicidal until his feet remained above the surface. He Jia's boots sank repeatedly, forcing him to spend spiritual energy just keeping pace with someone who barely seemed to touch the ground. At one intersection, He Jia found a massive crater and convinced himself that Gu Fan had smuggled forbidden high-rank equipment into the exam. Limitless control. Let Gu Fan maintain movement without being dragged down by the current. The humiliation increased when Gu Fan began discussing a wager, instead of treating the core area as a life-threatening challenge. He Jia watched the impossible crossing and followed partly from anger, and partly because turning around would look like fear. The explanation protected his pride better that a local student might simply be stronger. He Jia still owned an unopened space ring worth roughly 10 million, a luxury item ordinary Luan students could never afford. The river punished his decision immediately. He followed the fresh trail toward the Area A bridge, determined to catch Gu Fan cheating and reclaim the top position. Gu Fan became interested the moment he learned the ring was legal only because it had not been activated before entering the exam. His heavy spear complicated balance, while water resistance reduced the explosive movement his lightning talent normally provided. Gu Fan meanwhile checked the scoreboard and saw his first-place lead, but considered the margin too small for his real objective. They agreed that He Jia would surrender the ring if Gu Fan proved himself against the dangerous creatures ahead. A violent carp attacked Gu Fan first, and seemed to offer He Jia proof that arrogance had finally gone too far. He Jia accepted, because he still believed the first real second-rank beast would expose Gu Fan's limit. First place in Luan City meant little if he wanted the provincial championship and the best university offers. The beast's open mouth stopped directly before Gu Fan without touching him. The swamp answered quickly with bubbles, rising through a patch of thick mud nearby. He Jia watched water continue, moving around the frozen-looking attack, while the target itself remained unreachable. Area A offered second-rank beasts, worth far more score and system points than anything he could still find in Area B. Gu Fan eliminated the carp and barely interrupted his crossing. A giant claw crab emerged, its body protected by heavy armor and claws large enough to tear through ordinary first-rank defenses. With roughly half the exam remaining, Gu Fan headed directly toward the core region. That moment changed He Jia's theory more than the crater had. He Jia recognized it as a second-rank beast and immediately tried to retreat. No hidden armor could explain a monster stopping before contact, while empty space remained visible. Gu Fan instead saw exactly the kind of high-value target he had entered Area A to find. The effect also explained Gu Fan's perfectly clean battlesuit. The crab attacked with overwhelming physical force. Yet Infinity denied the claws any contact no matter how close they appeared. By the time He Jia reached the opposite bank, he was already reconsidering whether cheating could describe anything he had seen. Technique reversal. Blue distorted the space around the monster and broke through defenses. He Jia expected to withstand student-level attacks. The swamp introduced a different problem, because deep mud erased the advantage of ordinary footwork. Gu Fan killed the second-rank lower creature. Before the capital student could contribute anything meaningful, Gu Fan used blue in controlled bursts to pull his body across unstable ground without sinking. The bracelet awarded a huge score increase, while the system delivered far more points than first-rank prey. He Jia lacked a comparable movement option and repeatedly spent energy extracting himself from mud. He Jia stared at the corpse and understood that his wager had already become extremely dangerous. Gu Fan teased him about capital education while continuing forward, increasing the transfer student's frustration. Gu Fan immediately demanded the promised ring instead of letting the stunned student pretend the agreement had been casual. The unopened space ring became part of their argument. After He Jia mentioned Spatial's equipment, He Jia reluctantly removed it and explained that injecting spiritual energy after the exam would activate roughly 3 cubic meters of storage. Gu Fan had never owned storage gear and immediately recognized the ring as something useful outside the exam. He Jia claimed the item was worth around 10 million because spatial crafters were rare. Gu Fan questioned the price because such a small space sounded absurdly expensive. Gu Fan challenged him to stake it on the next serious encounter. He Jia explained that spatial talents capable of manufacturing storage equipment were exceptionally rare, making capacity less important than scarcity. He Jia accepted because he expected the swamp's second-rank beasts to force Gu Fan into retreat. Gu Fan accepted the explanation and put the unopened ring away without activating it during the exam. The wager transformed the following encounter into more than another score opportunity. He Jia then asked Gu Fan to keep protecting him through Area A, because his injuries and depleted spiritual energy made solo survival doubtful. Bubbles disturbed the mud, and Six Eyes detected a large form moving beneath the surface before it fully emerged. Gufan refused to drag dead weight through the highest value zone when every remaining minute could produce points. The giant claw crab carried natural armor, far beyond the red claw tiger, and could crush ordinary first-rank battle suits with its pincers. He reminded Hijia that the bracelet had an emergency function, and that examiners could extract him safely. Hiji recognized the species immediately and backed away. Hijia offered money, but Gufan said no payment could replace the provincial first-place score he was chasing. Gufan remained where he was because a second-rank lower kill represented exactly the reward he wanted. The system user vanished deeper into the swamp, leaving the furious capital student behind. The crab's first claw accelerated with enough force to make the surrounding mud explode outward. Hijia eventually admitted that continuing would be suicidal and activated emergency rescue. Infinity stopped the attack at the final interval. Examiners reached him within minutes, ending his exam early and freezing his score where it stood. The creature tried the opposite claw and achieved the same impossible result. Gufan used the pause to study armor thickness, joint movement, and the energy concentrated through its body. The decision guaranteed that later candidates could pass him, destroying his earlier dream of a top national fly student. A direct fist would waste time against the shell. Outside the walls, officials treated Hijia's withdrawal as an expensive lesson in pride rather than a tragedy. Blue ignored that problem by applying force across the monster's entire position instead of targeting one protected surface. He had followed a stronger candidate into a zone beyond his capacity, exactly the kind of mistake that killed ability users outside controlled exams. The attack tore through the crab's balance and exposed vulnerable structure before Gufan finished the exchange. Director Chen noted that the rescue system existed precisely so students could discover those limits without dying. The system announced a much larger point reward than anything Area B had provided. The attention quickly returned to Gufan, whose feed showed him racing through swamp terrain, untouched by mud or beast attacks. The bracelet simultaneously added a major score bonus that widened Gufan's first-place lead. First-rank upper creatures began fleeing when they sensed him, an image none of the veteran educators had ever seen from a high school exam. Hijia had no remaining argument against the wager. Six Eyes found every movement through trees, water, reeds, and ruined structures before prey could hide. Gufan held out his hand and waited until the space ring was placed into it. Gufan hunted systematically, using fists when possible, and blew whenever distance or armor made direct combat inefficient. The capital student explained that the ring remained technically unactivated, and therefore had passed exam inspection as an ordinary object. Second-rank lower beasts delivered much larger rewards, encouraging him to search the core instead of wasting time on scattered, weaker targets. Only after spiritual energy entered it would the storage dimension become usable. Within several hours, the swamp's population visibly thinned, because Gufan had eliminated nearly everything capable of providing meaningful points. Gufan stored the information mentally and wore the ring without activating it. Hijia then discovered the cost of following someone much stronger into the core. The system balance climbed rapidly enough that he began thinking about the next Six Eyes stage again. His previous injuries, heavy spear, river crossing, and swamp travel, had already consumed too much energy. Before spending anything, Gufan discovered a cave containing the strongest creature he had seen all day. The next second-rank encounter could kill him, even if Gufan survived effortlessly. A rotting poison-mad rat emerged, towering over ordinary beasts with diseased fur, heavy flesh, and poisonous mist gathering around its body. He offered to pay Gufan for protection through the rest of the exam. The creature was second-rank middle, one small stage above the crab, but dramatically more dangerous in both endurance and special effects. Gufan refused because protecting Hijia would slow movement, change target selection, and reduce the score he could still earn. Gufan knew a prolonged fight would let poison spread through the area, so he chose speed over experimentation. Hijia tried raising the price, until Fan pointed out that no amount of cash could buy back a lost provincial championship. He compressed technique reversal, blew to maximum practical output, and targeted the beast before the toxic cloud fully formed. The emergency bracelet existed for exactly this situation. The spatial force struck hard enough to nearly fail against the rat's unusually tough body, which surprised Gufan after so many effortless kills. Hijia hated the humiliation, but eventually requested rescue rather than gamble his life. The monster remained alive for several moments, proving that second-rank progression created enormous differences even between nearby stages. 2 military examiners extracted him from Area A and officially ended his run. The rat battle occurred late enough that Gufan finally paused to check the system panel after hours of interrupted hunting. Gufan followed up before the poison could reach him and finally received the system confirmation of the kill. The outside audience learned that his score would no longer increase during the most competitive final hours. His formal rank remained first rank middle because the body's adaptation period still blocked another direct breakthrough. The reward was 36 system points, while the exam bracelet granted a massive score bonus for a second rank middle target. Director Chen described the withdrawal as a necessary correction to He Jia's lack of self-awareness. Spiritual energy stood at 200. The threshold Gufan had deliberately purchased earlier in Area B. Six eyes remained at initial awakening, while red and purple were still locked behind future progression. The capital student possessed genuine talent, but pride had pushed him into a region chosen by someone operating on a different level. Gufan noted that a second-rank upper beast might still exceed his current reliable combat range. Intermediate fist proficiency had already proven useful enough that Gufan felt no regret about spending 200 points on it. In an uncontrolled beast habitat, the same stake could have killed him. That limitation did not discourage him. It simply gave the system another measurable target to erase later. The new system balance approached 2,000 points, despite every upgrade purchased during the exam. Gufan continued alone and immediately accelerated his hunt. That total showed how much more efficient high-rank prey had become, compared with the outer zone wolves from the morning. He had transmigrated into a world where real beast tides could wipe out cities, so being strongest its students meant almost nothing by itself. Gufan briefly imagined reaching 3,000 and partially awakening 6 eyes before leaving the exam site. The core area swamp contained fewer creatures overall, yet nearly every target offered far better rewards. Gufan wanted enough power that a future wall collapse would not reduce him to another helpless civilian. Then he looked around the nearly empty swamp and realized he had eliminated most creatures capable of supplying the missing amount. Mudworms, armored beasts, river predators, and other upper-stage monsters fell before they could create sustained pressure. The shortage amused him because the exam had become too small rather than too difficult. The systems made that goal realistic, but only if he kept finding points and using them intelligently. The 12-point system rewards accumulated quickly. His bracelet provided the second piece of evidence. He opened the status panel after the rat battle and found nearly 2,000 points accumulated from the core area slaughter. The live score had crossed 41,000 points before the final half hour. Second-rank lower kills delivered even larger bursts, making the remaining hours Gufan's most productive period since system activation. Mu Fuxue occupied second among Luan students with a score that would have been considered excellent in any ordinary year. Six Eyes' partial awakening still demanded 3,000, so even a successful exam had not made the upgrade cheap. Six Eyes prevented ambushes because foliage, water movement, and partial cover could not hide energy patterns completely. He Jia's frozen score remained above many candidates for a while, despite his early exit, proving his original skill had never been fake. Gus resisted spending the balance impulsively, because rank, spiritual energy, and technique growth could each offer better immediate value. Blue functioned as movement, crowd control, and finishing force, depending on how Gufan positioned the attractive point. Gufan's total simply belonged to a different scale. Director Chen compared the number with historical Zhangbei results and discovered Gufan had already doubled the previous year's provincial champion. His smart bracelet showed an even more shocking number. Infinity handled the rare attacks that arrived too quickly, or from angles not worth physically dodging. Luan City's own long-term record was far lower still. Gufan had exceeded 41,000 exam points, while Mu Fuxie remained below 9,000, and every other candidate trailed far behind. Intermediate fist proficiency saved energy whenever a vulnerable target came within ordinary striking range. Principal Liu began imagining what one provincial first place could do for future enrollment government funding and the school's reputation. Last year's Zhangbei provincial champion had scored only a little above 20,000. The 4 upgrades supported one another, rather than competing for a single combat role. Teacher Liu thought about the same number more personally. He had not insulted Gufan during the preference meeting, yet the memory of advising him to quit now felt almost comically outdated. That balance was exactly why Gufan preferred rank and foundation growth over rushing toward red. Gu Fan had effectively doubled a recent provincial winning score before the exam had even ended. Several other teachers asked whether Six Eyes might be one of the rare evolving abilities mentioned in old Education Bureau archives. By the time he found the deepest cave, most beasts in the core had already learned to avoid his direction. Outside the wall, Director Chen stood from his seat when the number appeared, convinced for several seconds that the ranking system had malfunctioned. Director Chen considered the possibility plausible after remembering the strange orange-to-gray transition on Awakening Day. The rotting poison mad rat refused that instinctive retreat. The officials had no system information, but they were moving closer to the correct explanation through observable evidence alone. Principal Liu reacted even more emotionally, because Luan City had never produced anything remotely close to that result. Gu Fan remained unaware of most of that discussion, while searching the swamp for anything still worth killing. Its enormous body carried diseased flesh, tough enough to withstand attacks that would destroy first-rank upper creatures instantly. Teacher Liu stared at the screen and remembered advising Gu Fan to withdraw only days earlier. He found weaker beasts fleeing at the edges of his perception and decided not to waste large techniques chasing tiny rewards. Poison vapor began gathering before the beast fully entered the open area. The final minutes became a route back toward the city wall rather than another dramatic battle. A supposedly E-rank student had not merely survived. He had broken a record that stronger schools across the province could not approach. Whenever a legal target crossed that path, Gu Fan collected the points and continued moving. Gu Fan understood that Infinity might stop direct contact, but did not want to experiment with a spreading environmental toxin during an exam. The educators finally stopped comparing Gu Fan with Luan students and began comparing him with national-level geniuses. The bracelet's countdown turned red as the remaining time approached 0. The correct answer was to kill the source before the cloud expanded. Gu Fan kept his attacks controlled because a kill after the end signal could invalidate part of an otherwise perfect performance. Even that comparison felt uncertain because none of them had ever watched a candidate treat Area A like a personal hunting ground. He drove blue with the maximum output he considered safe at current spiritual energy reserves. At exactly 5, the exam alarm rang through every candidate bracelet inside the abandoned town. Gu Fan noticed only half an hour remained and regretted that the core had almost nothing left worth killing. The automated notice repeated that hunting had ended and ordered all participants to leave the combat zones. The rat's body endured the initial spatial violence better than the giant crab. Gu Fan stopped immediately, even though one nearby creature could have added a few final points. He retraced part of his route, collecting several additional creatures while obeying the exam boundary rules. That resistance forced Gu Fan to recognize how large the gap between second rank lower and middle could become. The restraint mattered because his real goal was a verified result, not squeezing value from a technical violation. At exactly 5 in the afternoon, every bracelet sounded the official end signal. He attacked again before the creature recovered. He opened the system panel one more time and confirmed 2,125 points remained unused. That balance could later become rank growth, spiritual energy, fist proficiency, Six Eyes advancement, or emergency recycling leverage. Only after the body stopped moving completely did the system award 36 points, confirming the rat had finally died. Candidates were ordered to stop hunting immediately, and any later kill would be treated as a violation. Fan dismissed the panel and started toward the exit at an ordinary pace. Gu Fan stored the lesson more carefully than the reward. Gu Fan dispersed the cursed energy from his fists and checked one final system total. Outside, the ranking board froze permanently at 42,351 for Gu Fan. A second-rank upper enemy could plausibly threaten him, even after everything he had gained that day. Mu Fu Shui finished with a little over 8,500, an impressive score completely overshadowed by the provincial leader. He had finished the exam with 2,125 unused points. He Jia remained around 4,000 because the rescue call had ended his exam hours earlier. The exam had made him look invincible to students, yet Blue Star's real danger began far above student-level rankings. The number pleased him, though he still wished the legal hunting window had lasted longer. Many students still inside lower zones finished between several hundred and several thousand, depending on rank, risk tolerance, and hunting efficiency. That realization strengthened his original decision to keep progressing until Beast Tides no longer represented helpless disaster. The gap made Gu Fan's total look almost like a typographical error. When the score finalized, Gu Fan held 42,351 exam points. Candidates arriving at the rest square pointed at the board and compared it with their own bracelets repeatedly. Mu Fushu finished a distant second in Luan City, while Hejia's early withdrawal froze him much farther behind. Some had fought until their arms shook for 1,000 points and could not understand how another teenager produced 40 times that amount. Rumors spread faster than official explanations. Students returning through the gate gathered beneath the scoreboard and initially assumed Gufan's number had to be an error. One group claimed Gufan must have discovered a hidden nest full of easy targets. Some had spent 8 hours fighting desperately for barely a few thousand points. Another insisted he had a special scoring bonus nobody else knew about. The idea that another candidate had earned more than 40,000 sounded less believable than a broken bracelet. Students from Luan No. 1 High School corrected them by mentioning his strange awakening and the viral Yuan Sen incident. At first, listeners laughed at the claim that the provincial champion had an E-rank ability. When they asked who Gu Fan was, classmates explained that his official ability record still listed E-rank 6 eyes. Then, several recognized Gu Fan's face from the street footage and stopped laughing. The crowd laughed until someone remembered the viral student who had defeated Yuan Sen on the street. The pieces finally matched. The high school student who ignored a second-rank assassin had been sitting unnoticed in the same graduating class. Zhang Yuanhao enjoyed explaining that Gafan had admitted the truth openly, while everyone around him treated the confession as a joke. That connection spread instantly, and the impossible score suddenly had a face everyone recognized. That detail turned the story into something students repeated immediately. Zhang Yuanhao joined the discussion with enormous pride, enjoying the attention that came from being the provincial monster's closest friend. Gu Fan had not hidden behind a fake identity. People had simply refused to believe the answer. When the city gate opened for the last wave of candidates, dozens of conversations stopped at once. He had earned a strong score himself and expected admission to an excellent university. Yet even he could barely process Gu Fan's result. Gu Fan appeared from the ruined district, without the exhausted posture seen on nearly every other participant. Then someone shouted that Gu Fan was walking out of the city gate. His clothing remained unusually clean, because Infinity had prevented direct contact during the most dangerous battles. The few physical exchanges he chose were too short to produce the prolonged mess visible on other students. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the entrance at once. That appearance made the score feel even more absurd. Other candidates emerged dirty, injured, exhausted, and covered in signs of repeated combat. Someone began applauding, and the reaction spread through the square until the sound became impossible to ignore. Gu Fan had expected attention after taking first, but the emotional reaction from older educators surprised him more than student cheers. Gu Fan appeared spotless again, hands relaxed in his pockets and expression closer to a casual walk than the end of an 8-hour beast hunt. Director Chen had spent years watching Luan candidates disappear from provincial rankings behind better funded cities. That visual difference convinced the remaining doubters more effectively than any explanation. To him, Gu Fan's result represented regional pride rather than one student's personal victory. Principal Liu carried a similar reaction for No. 1 High School, which had gone many years without reaching Great Xiao's 3 elite universities. Applause spread through the square until teachers, students, and officials were celebrating the result together. Teacher Liu approached later than the officials and offered a sincere congratulations without trying to defend his earlier judgment. Director Chen approached first and shook Gu Fan's hand with tears already forming in his eyes. Gu Fan accepted it easily because the teacher had acted from concern and the data available at the time. A rational adult seeing E rank on paper should have warned a student about lethal exam risks. He called Gu Fan the pride of Luan City and emphasized that the score had created history for the entire region. The unreasonable part was Gu Fan's hidden system, not Teacher Liu's advice. Principal Liu followed, overwhelmed by what the result would mean for a school absent from the elite university spotlight for years. Mu Fuxue stood outside the main circle and watched a crowd that usually formed around her shift entirely toward Gu Fan. Her second-place result still guaranteed excellent university opportunities. Teacher Liu congratulated Gu Fan with an expression mixing happiness, embarrassment, and disbelief. Even so, being overlooked after awakening S-rank sleeved white snow created a complicated emotion she had never experienced at school. Gu Fan did not mock him for the earlier advice, because the teacher had made a reasonable judgment from completely misleading information. she did not turn that feeling into hostility. Instead, Mu Fushu compared her own difficult upper-stage fights with Gu Fan's core area record and accepted that the gap was currently real. Mu Fuxue watched the crowd shift toward Gu Fan and experienced the unfamiliar feeling of becoming almost invisible. Zhang Yunhao had a simpler response and looked happier about Gu Fan's first place than many students looked about their own scores. She had awakened the school's only publicly recognized S-rank talent and still performed brilliantly. Yet Gu Fan's score swallowed every comparison. His own performance was strong enough for a nationally respected university, giving him little reason to feel cheated by comparison. He had also chosen not to follow Gu Fan into Area B, so every point on his bracelet still represented his own effort. Rather than openly resent him, she quietly reconsidered how large the gap between their current combat paths might already be. He Jia was absent from the celebration because his rescue had removed him from the site earlier. During the ride home, Principal Liu finally asked the question everyone had avoided. His 4,000-point score could still support a good university, but the capital school dream he expected became much less certain. Was Six Eyes really an E-rank ability, or had the Awakening Stone recorded something it did not understand? Losing the space ring made the lesson even more expensive. Director Chen eventually guided Gu Fan away from the crowd so they could discuss the ability record before rumors became official confusion. Gu Fan's answered that Six Eyes had been unawakened during the ceremony and that its current initial stage should be classified as S-rank. Principal Liu and Teacher Liu joined the conversation during the ride toward Gu Fan's neighborhood. Principal Liu visibly relaxed because an S-rank explanation at least restored some logic to the record. They asked directly whether Six Eyes had somehow changed after the ceremony. Gu Fan saw no reason to maintain an E-rank disguise that contradicted public battle footage. Director Chen confirmed that extremely rare talents sometimes evolved after awakening, though cases were unusual enough to confuse ordinary testing systems. He explained that Six Eyes was sealed during the original test and had awakened shortly afterward. Gu Fan did not mention the SSS rank ceiling or the system controlling his progression. Its current initial stage matched S-rank performance rather than the gray E-rank final reading. Principal Liu accepted the explanation immediately because it connected every contradictory observation from Awakening Day. That information offered no advantage when S-rank already explained everything the adults needed to know. Director Chen remembered archived cases where unusual talents changed rank after later activation conditions were met. Director Chen then asked which university Gu Fan intended to choose. Those cases were extremely rare, but they provided a public framework that did not require Gu Fan to reveal the system. Teacher Liu finally understood why Gu Fan had remained calm when the Awakening Stone announced failure. Fan admitted he had focused so completely on taking first place that he had not studied the differences among elite institutions. Gu Fan deliberately stopped the explanation at S-rank. Great Xia's highest tier consisted of Capital University, Imperial Capital University, and Magic Capital University. He did not tell them that the system described complete Six Eyes as an eventual SSS rank talent. He also kept quiet about the exact conditions for red, purple, direct rank upgrades, recycling, and point income. With Gu Fan's score, Director Chen expected all three schools to send representatives rather than wait for a normal application. Publicly explaining one evolving ability solved the administrative problem without exposing the engine behind his growth. Gu Fan decided the simplest strategy was to compare their offers and choose whichever institution provided the best conditions for future growth. Director Chen then shifted from classification to recruitment. A Jiangbei provincial champion could apply anywhere, but Gu Fan's unusual score guaranteed schools would compete before normal selection deadlines. For him, university prestige mattered less than access to beasts, resources, equipment, and recyclable value that could become system points. Great Xia's three most prestigious ability universities sat clearly above the rest. By the time he reached his old neighborhood, the provincial champion cared more about optimization than celebration. Capital University, Imperial Capital University, and Magic Capital University received national resources other schools could not match. Their graduates trained around stronger beasts, better equipment, larger research facilities, and higher-rank instructors. For most students, gaining admission to even one would end every debate immediately. Gu Fan's problem was the opposite. His score gave him realistic access to all three, so he needed criteria for choosing among equally Director Chen suggested waiting for direct recruitment offers because elite schools often provided special packages to exceptional candidates. Those packages could include money, housing, equipment, training permissions, beast zone access, or other individual benefits. Gufan cared most about resources capable of turning into system progression. Spirit stones could strengthen ordinary users, but recyclable equipment or access to fierce beasts might be worth far more to him. Training grounds mattered if they contained targets providing points. Rare items mattered if the recycling function valued them highly. A famous professor mattered less if the system could upgrade proficiency faster than traditional instruction. Gufan kept those calculations private and simply agreed to compare conditions. Back home, physical fatigue finally caught up with him once the adrenaline of the exam and celebration disappeared. He took a shower, changed clothes, and let the quiet apartment replace the noise of the square. The space ring sat on his finger as the first tangible reward, obtained directly from outperforming a rival. Activating it revealed storage, too small for large-scale transport, but still enormously useful for daily equipment and future hunting. Gufan tested several household objects until the input conditions became intuitive. Only items he touched and intentionally stored moved inside. The spatial perception felt strangely natural beside Six Eyes and the system interface. His curiosity about recycling appeared almost immediately because the ring carried a clear market value. The 500-point offer disappointed him, not because the points were small, but because the monetary conversion looked terrible. 10 million in currency for 500 system points meant buying luxury items solely to recycle them would bankrupt an ordinary student. The discovery prevented Gufan from forming an unrealistic plan based on cash alone. System points were best earned through beasts and carefully selected resources, not blindly purchasing expensive objects. The ring therefore remained more valuable as storage than immediate fuel. Gufan's 2,000-point balance created several possible upgrade paths once cooldowns cleared. Partial Six Eyes Awakening remained the most exciting option at 3,000. First rank upper at 500 was the more efficient all-around option. Spiritual Energy offered adjustable improvement if Gufan needed a specific threshold. Fist proficiency could rise again later if close combat began limiting his performance. Gufan preferred flexibility and refused to spend anything before the rank button became available. He went to sleep instead of forcing unnecessary training into a body still adapting to the day's breakthrough. The following week gave Luan City time to turn Gufan into a local story. Exam footage circulated beyond school channels and reached provincial ability communities. Some viewers focused on the 42,000 score, while others replayed the moment. Red Claw Tigers fled for a student. Blue's destructive scenes attracted the most debate because observers disagreed whether the technique was gravity, telekinesis, space control, or something else. Infinity created even more confusion because cameras showed attacks stopping without revealing a visible barrier. Gufan ignored online theories and let the official results speak when verification finished. On announcement morning, Jiang Yuanhao called with enough excitement to sound as though he had personally taken provincial first. Gufan entered his admission information and confirmed that no scoring review had reduced the result. The official ranking number 1 gave him exactly the bargaining position Director Chen had predicted. Principal Lu's call minutes later proved the prediction faster than expected. All 3 elite universities had representatives already waiting in the school reception room. Their advance arrival meant Gufan had been monitored as a recruitment target before the public ranking became official. The situation completed the reversal from Awakening Day. Less than 2 weeks earlier, school staff had discussed whether Gufan should risk entering the martial exam at all. Now Great Xia's strongest universities had traveled across the country to persuade that same student to choose them. That evening, Gufan showered, collapsed onto his bed, and finally reviewed the day without cameras, teachers, or cheering students surrounding him. The provincial score pleased him, yet system balance mattered more, because those points represented permanent growth rather than a one-day ranking. He remembered Director Chen's advice to let the 3 elite universities compete for him instead of choosing from reputation alone. A top school could provide training grounds, beast zones, equipment, and access to resources that were expensive everywhere else. Gufan had no need for a traditional master to teach him slowly when the system could directly engrave technique proficiency. He also had little reason to chase ordinary cultivation manuals if points could upgrade rank and spiritual energy without years of meditation. That made institutional resources more valuable than institutional instruction. The silver space ring on his finger suddenly caught the room light and reminded Gu Fan of the wager Jia had lost. He injected spiritual energy into it for the first time, now that the exam restriction no longer mattered. A small 3 cubic meter storage space opened directly inside his perception. Gu Fan tested the function by touching a pillow and sending it into the ring with a thought. The process was simple, fast, and useful, enough that he immediately understood why spatial equipment commanded absurd prices. Then another idea appeared. If the system could recycle ordinary items, perhaps an expensive space ring would convert into a huge point reward. Gu Fan opened the recycling interface and placed the ring inside without confirming the transaction. The system valued it at only 500 points. He stared at the number, offended that an item worth roughly 10 million could produce so little progression currency. The conversion rate made immediate recycling look wasteful, especially when the ring still offered practical storage. Gu Fan declined the trade and returned the ring to his finger. The option remained available for emergencies, meaning the ring could still become 500 points later if an upgrade ever required them urgently. His current balance stood at 2,125 points. Adding the ring would bring him closer to the 3,000 required for partial Six Eyes Awakening. Yet, Gu Fan still rejected that plan. Partial Awakening would unlock technique reversal, red, but a rank increase would strengthen every existing ability at once. Moving from first rank middle to upper required only 500 points once his body finished adapting. Higher rank would raise base spiritual energy, cursed energy output, physical performance, infinity's defense, and blue's destructive force simultaneously. By comparison, spending 3,000 points mainly to deepen Six Eyes looked inefficient at his current stage. Gu Fans decided to prioritize all-around rank growth before chasing spectacular techniques simply because they sounded powerful. The system's cooldown prevented immediate upgrading, so he could not spend the points even if he wanted. That restriction turned the next week into forced recovery, rather than frantic training. Gu Fan slept with the calm confidence of someone who had already secured provincial first place before official results were released. Several quiet days passed after the practical exam. Public discussion around Luan City continued growing, as clips of Gu Fan's fights spread beyond the local school network. The score remained unofficial until provincial verification finished, but nobody who had watched the live broadcast expected the result to change meaningfully. Gu Fan mostly ignored the attention and waited for his body to adapt to the first-rank middle breakthrough. 1 week later, Jiang Yanhao called during the morning and announced that the official martial arts results had finally been published. Gu Fan checked the date and realized summer break had moved faster than he expected. He opened the government results page, entered his examination information, and waited for the final record to load. The table confirmed 42,351 points, with no policy bonus added. More importantly, the provincial ranking displayed one. Gu Fan smiled because the target he had set in Teacher Lu's hallway was now an official result, rather than confidence. He had not merely taken Luan City's top position. He had finished first across Jiangbei Province by an enormous margin. Jiang Yuanhao called again almost immediately, but Gu Fan barely had time to enjoy the result before another phone vibration interrupted him. Principal Lu was calling personally. The principal told Gu Fan to prepare because representatives from all 3 top universities had already reached Luan City. Their speed meant the schools must have received internal score information before the public website updated. Capital University, Imperial Capital University, and Magic Capital University were too far away for ordinary same morning travel without advanced preparation. Gu Fan accepted the obvious conclusion. The elite schools had been watching likely top scorers before official publication. Principal Lu and Director Chen planned to escort the 3 representatives directly to Gu Fan's home. The student looked around his modest apartment and briefly wished the adults had provided more warning. He lived alone and almost never hosted visitors, so the old sofa and simple coffee table were the best reception area available. Gu Fan changed clothes, cleared the room, and decided there was no point pretending his background was wealthier than reality. A knock arrived less than half an hour later. Principal Lu and Director Chen entered first, followed by 3 admissions representatives, whose spiritual pressure immediately marked them as serious ability users. The Magic Capital representative was Ji Mingwan, while Tang Qing represented Capital University, and Liang Yan came from Imperial Capital University. All three appeared roughly middle-aged and carried much stronger auras than the local educators beside them. Gufans estimated that even the chief examiner from the martial arts test had felt less oppressive at close range. The visitors politely dismissed Gufan's apology about the simple home, reminding him that they had arrived without much notice. Once everyone sat, Gufan avoided ceremonial conversation and asked them to state their recruitment conditions directly. The bluntness surprised the representatives because small city students usually treated elite university admissions teachers with visible nervousness. Yet 42,000 provincial points gave Gufan unusual leverage, and every person in the room understood it. Before offering benefits, Jimingwan raised a key question that all three schools needed answered. Gufan's official file listed E-Frank 6 eyes, while battle footage showed a defensive and spatial ability far beyond that classification. A university could not design an appropriate offer without knowing whether the file was wrong, incomplete, or hiding a second talent. Gufan repeated the explanation he had given Principal Liu after the exam. Gufan's apartment became an unusual negotiation room because none of the visitors could hide how carefully they were evaluating him. X's eyes had been unawakened when the stone tested him, producing the misleading E-rank result. Jimingwan studied the provincial champion's posture, looking for the nervousness expected from an 18-year-old meeting elite recruiters. After awakening, its current performance belonged around S rank, though the talent still had room to develop. Tongqing focused more on the official file, repeatedly comparing the E-rank record with combat footage on her tablet. The representatives accepted the possibility of post-awakening evolution, but Limitless remained difficult to understand from words alone. Liang Yan paid attention to Gufan's spiritual pressure and noticed that his formal cultivation remained surprisingly low for the score. Gufan considered keeping the technique abstract, then realized a stronger demonstration would increase the university's willingness to compete. That combination made the result even more valuable, since a first-rank middle student had dominated opponents far above typical examination expectations. Principal Liu introduced Gufan's family situation briefly, explaining that he lived alone and had reached this point without expensive private resources. He invited one representative to step closer and try a simple high five. The admissions teachers did not pity him. They calculated how much faster such a student might grow once national resources became available. Ji Mingwan volunteered, expecting a harmless perceptual trick rather than a direct defense demonstration. Gufan recognized the shift and became even less interested in polite small talk. His palm moved toward Gufan's and stopped a short distance away. He wanted concrete advantages, not compliments about talent or inspirational comments about overcoming poverty. Ji Mingwan pushed again and felt no ordinary barrier, only a bizarre slowing effect that prevented the remaining distance from disappearing. Ji Mingwan's question about 6 eyes therefore mattered, because ability classification would determine how aggressively each school valued future growth. Gufan explained that the hand was still approaching in theory, but the intervening space kept dividing so contact never arrived. Gufan gave the safest truthful answer. The eyes had been sealed during testing and awakened after the ceremony. He described the current stage as S rank, without mentioning that the system still labeled it only initial awakening. The 5th-rank teacher stared at his own arm, because brute force had not produced the expected answer. The teachers knew rare abilities could evolve, yet none had personally seen a gray E-rank result become something this dominant within days. Gufan then invited Tongqing and Liang Yan to test the same phenomenon with a handshake. That was why they asked for a demonstration, rather than accepting theory. Both women reached forward and experienced the same impossible result. Gufan chose Infinity because it revealed extraordinary value without exposing his strongest offensive output. Their fingers appeared close enough to touch Gufan, yet the last fraction of distance refused to close. Ji Mingwan approached with the confidence of a 5th-rank teacher who expected to identify any simple defensive trick immediately. The three representatives exchanged looks that were much more serious than before the demonstration. His hand slowed before contact, even though he felt no wall, pressure wave, or conventional force pushing him backward. Adding more strength did not solve the problem, because the technique was changing approach rather than resisting force directly. An ability capable of denying physical contact without a visible shield had obvious defensive value, even before considering Blue's attack power. Tongqing tried from another angle and encountered the same final interval. Ji Mingwan asked whether stronger force could break through, but Gufan refused to reveal limits he had not fully tested himself. Liang tested his handshake and watched her fingers remain separated from Gufan by a distance too small to explain normal defense. He emphasized that the current version was still developing and tied to Six Eyes' awakening stage. The three teachers began discussing spatial mechanics, but Gufan's explanation involving endlessly divided distance only created more questions. That answer made the ability more valuable, not less, because it implied future growth beyond the already abnormal exam footage. That confusion pleased him because a technique experienced experts could not quickly classify was difficult for future enemies to counter. Principal Liu watched the elite teachers struggle with the concept and seemed relieved that local staff had not been uniquely confused. Gu Fan avoided claiming absolute invulnerability because he had never tested infinity against every rank or unusual special ability. Instead, he emphasized that the technique had already stopped a second-rank assassination skill and self-destruction during real combat. Director Chen quietly realized that the recruitment offers were about to become much more aggressive. The recruiters had seen those recordings and now understood that the footage had not been produced by hidden armor. Gu Fan remained calm because university competition was simply another resource problem waiting to be optimized. Principal Liu watched their reactions and finally appreciated why Gu Fan had never looked worried about the martial exam. He had entered the ceremony labeled E rank, been advised to abandon the martial route, and watched classmates dismiss his claims as jokes. Director Chen realized the discussion was moving beyond normal provincial recruitment and into national talent competition. Less than 2 weeks later, three of Great Sha's strongest universities were sitting in his old living room, trying to understand how to recruit him. Gu Fan leaned back and waited for the three universities to translate their surprise into actual offers. The recruiters had not revealed final packages yet. Leaving Gu Fan at the moment, his provincial victory began converting into real opportunity. The only confirmed advantage so far was attention, as every elite recruiter now regarded his Six Eyes as a national-level talent. At that moment, Gu Fan held provincial first place, while all three top universities prepared to compete for him. His next choice was no longer whether he belonged on the martial path, but which elite platform could feed the system fastest. His SSS tier potential remained a private system ceiling, not a rank the public world had already witnessed. Six Eyes still had multiple awakening stages locked ahead, and the full SSS tier ceiling remained far beyond his current S-rank state. Technique reversal, red and hollow technique, purple were still unavailable, while even his formal ability user rank remained only first rank middle. Those limits mattered because they showed how early Gu Fan still was in a progression that had already shattered Luan City's expectations. The school had laughed at an E-rank reading because nobody could see the sealed talent sitting behind it. Gu Fan now had proof that the weakest-looking awakening of the ceremony had produced Jiangbei Province's strongest exam result.